A few weeks ago was Undertale's 10th anniversary, and during the stream hosted by the Fangamer team, we saw a slightly different version of the game we knew. The first big thing was inside the ruins. Where we usually find the toy knife, there was a long walkway leading to the center of the old capital. Personally, with this section of Undertale where we got to Asgard's castle always seemed a bit odd to me. This whole section was an exact copy of the ruins, but in grey. But apparently this was here all along. On the center there's a statue of the queen, and inside one of the buildings was a toy knife. Further on, arriving to Snowdin, they take a slide leading to a previously unknown area. Here they find a lumberjack, a Christmas tree monster. When asked why he was cutting down the trees, he replies it was because they reminded him of himself. He thought he would get stronger if he fought against himself, and indeed he did, but his heart didn't get stronger. But thanks to Frisk stopping by, he mentions he had forgotten to do something up there. He usually spends so much time here, he forgets there is a whole world out there. This not so subtle dialogue makes the intentions of all these changes very clear. The extra content that will not be added to the base version of the game is not necessarily to mock the player, but rather to show that the underground was bigger than it seemed, that during Frisk's journey through the Monster Kingdom we only saw a small part of it. But these are not just goofy additions and silly jokes at the community. When we take a closer look at the Christmas tree in the center of Snowdin, we find a small Noel, completely ignored by the Fangamer guys. This retroactively adds the holiday family to Undertale. Supposedly they were here all along, but now we do see her on a real Undertale copy. Another thing that they tease us with is the battle against Sans. Remember that in the game files there is an unused song called Song That Might Play When You Fight Sans, and since the stream got to a certain number of donations, we now can play a pacifist Sans fight, with a saxophone version of Megalovania playing on the background. Although I want you to keep in mind that Tricky Tony likes to mock the community, and it's undeniable that Sans's motive plays on the unused song. Besides, the unused version is called Song That Might Play, so we could say that either of these might play during his fight. Also, there's a Spamton cameo at Grillbus. As I told you, not everything here should be taken seriously, and as only Toby knows how to do, the corridor on Waterfall appears, and this time the door has color. And this was the breaking point of a lot of people, but we'll get to that later. I just want you to remember these words. Copies are monochrome. Further on in Waterfall, we see an underwater section when diving with Onion Sen. We didn't have an underwater zone in Undertale, but now we can picture where the Monster Kid and Undyne and other fish-like monsters might come from, and I would love to connect this to the old Song from the Sea thing on Deltarune, but I have nothing in mind. Later in Hotland, there are a few details I really liked, such as the small houses hanging from the rock bridges. Hotland always seemed to me like a rock corridor floating on the air, but now I can see where monsters were supposed to live. And now for a very random addition, Hotland High. Yeah, there's no way saying that this part is empty now. During the stream, this only served to stretch Metaton's chase. And not only is there another Tammy here, but since Office was busy in the lab, this classroom teacher is none other than Bertley's mom. And not only that, since there is no other character with these characteristics, that being the messy hair and the jacket, we have to guess that this one right here is Susie. Since reptiles are cold-blooded, it makes sense for her to wear gloves on Hotland, I think. And with that, we've located all of the Delta Kids, or at least one family member of the Delta Kids. And of course, the Metaton part is extended just a bit longer. And there is another appearance of Mew Mew, for some reason. Much later in the battle against Omega Flowey, a few discarded sprites were added that never made it into the final version. But don't get me wrong, but I kinda see why they were cut. They look a bit silly considering the twisted tone of the fight, but it's all worth it for the sake of fanservice, man. After finishing the neutral route, they enter the true lab, where we find this atrocity, that some people swear it's a photoshopped version of Scott Cawthon's face. I'll take that. After defeating Asriel during the walk back through the underground, we see more of New Home. This has also been extended a bit more. This one is another part I always thought was weird for being just another corridor, and now it's a copy of the new ruins. An almost exact copy of the ruins, only this time it's inhabited. We have some more cute interactions with some of the characters, and on the way back to Snowdin, we see that Glide, one of the game's hidden enemies, now has an overworld sprite. There we also find the annoying dog cave and a hole leading to a dungeon made of dog hair. This is just a jab to super hard optional dungeons found on JRPGs like Final Fantasy and such, and I also love this part where Toby gets mad at them for dying on the dungeon.
Ow!
Dude.
Oh.
Now, upon returning to the ruins, or well, the ruins' extension, we find two rather special things. First, an old froggy tells us more of what happened to the previous humans, that each one reacted differently to this new world. Some stayed with Toriel, others decided to fight, others were scared, and more or less what the fan theories said all these years. And finally, upon returning to the library, we find Gerson, who previously didn't have a sprite for Undertale. He was just a waterfall shopkeeper. He was browsing some books about the history of monsters before leaving the underground forever. Apparently, the conflict between humans and monsters did not happen exactly as the legends told. The sites weren't entirely defined because there used to be an alliance between both species, and not even Gerson knows how the war started. And there were both monsters and humans who didn't want to fight even, himself included, and when finally they were sealed up, he did not resist. He also mentions he had feelings for one of the sorceresses who made the barrier. And the cherry on top, the creation of the barrier drained all the humans of their magic, giving a reason as to why humans are powerless on this universe in comparison to the monsters, and a reason as to why Gerson Boom, their greatest warrior, didn't mop the floor with the humans. And that's a lot of insight on how the fandom imagined how the old conflict played out. But anyways, I think it's time for us to address the door-shaped elephant in the room, right? Gaster's door. The first thing we notice about the door, it's the same color as the door in Sans and Papyrus's house. But considering that these three are connected by points we already know, the phone types, the Gaster blasters, the lab, there is no need to go into it much further. The three skeletons from Undertale are connected, what a surprise. And we could dismiss all of this by saying that Tori was mocking us, putting the hallway and the door on an extended version of Undertale and specifically instructing the fangamer guys to not interact or mention anything related to the door, but I have a bigger question. Why is it brown? I do believe that the colors are very important to understanding why the door we find in Undertale is different, and to further explain my point, we'll have to go to Deltarune's chapter 3. When I was playing that chapter and when I realized that a huge part of it was going to be a Zelda reference, I knew it was going to be very important. Straightly important, that I say. Mentally, I never recovered from the FNAF minigames. In the zone where we get the Easter egg, after escaping the Task Bunny, we get to a place that, to put it simply, it's the space underneath and between the couch cushions. That's why it's a hidden area of this dark world that it's just the dreamer's living room. There we find shrunken enemies from chapter 1. Remember that these enemies were aces from the card deck. One of these mentions that when Chris was a kid, he photocopied a bunch of cards to cheat on a game. He lost some of them, and colored the remaining to make them look legitimate. The cards end up under the cushions. That's why he says that the copies are monochrome, because they are photocopied cards. One of them was looking through a pair of binoculars, and says that there was something ugly out there, but when we take a look to them, there was just a patch of grey grass. But why does this copy, a colored copy though, reacts this way when seeing something that's grey? I think it could be a natural reaction of something that's a copy when seeing another copy, rejecting the fact that it's an imitation, a doppelganger seeing another doppelganger maybe. Or perhaps the appearance of a copy is abnormal by nature. During the stream, when we reach the new home, we see an NPC trying to paint a building, but they were leaving for the surface, so he was going to leave it like that. We could argue that this is someone's normal reaction when seeing something black and white, and that it doesn't mean anything. I mean, new home have always been this way, right? But have you ever wondered why all of New Home is monochromatic? It's an almost perfect copy of Toriel's house and the ruins. The only thing with color are the flowers probably left by Asgore, but where am I going with all of this? I think the Goners might be copies of normal NPCs we encounter throughout Undertale. The Goner Kid is a copy of the Monster Kid, not just another monster that looks like him that disappeared. That would explain why Goners are slightly different, like the giant face, which when we find it on Deltarune, it's just a bird. Copies are not perfect, and copies are monochromatic. The same goes for the door in the hallway in Waterfall. It's a copy of the one on Sans and Papyrus's home, as if we needed another motive to connect Gaster with these two, the difference being the flame motif underneath it's missing. Flame that, should I remind you, it's our means of transportation in the Dark World. So what does this all mean? The first thing is obvious. The Goners, or Gaster followers, are copies of NPCs originally found on Undertale/Deltarune, and you may ask, wait, does this mean that Gaster is a copy of someone else? And does it mean that the mystery man behind all of this, the another him, is a copy? Does that mean that the original Gaster, who is not a ghost and does not disappear out of thin air, was behind that door all this time? And that's where I differ, because Gaster is not monochromatic, he's black and white. There is a key difference between those two. He's more reminiscent of entities made of determination or darkness, and seeing how the Roaring Night and the Amalgams behave leads me to believe that Gaster's nature fits better with those things than a monochromatic copy. It could be that someone, possibly Gaster, is using another method to create these copies, either through determination or darkness, and I think the simplest proof of all this is when you look at New Home. Do you really think Asgore built an exact copy of the ruins and his ex's house without anyone else's help? I find it very odd, since New Home is a near-perfect copy. Keyword: near perfect. Almost perfect. What if the thing used to make objects and places, such as the ruins and the door, is the same he used to copy the Goners? And do you know who else is a copy? The vessel is a copy of Chris. That's the reason why I don't think Gaster could be a copy, because if that's the case, then who is the original Gaster? And who is copying all of these characters and locations, and for what reason? The most obvious answer is Gaster, you know? He's making the experiment, he's creating the vessel. But wait a moment, how copies are even made? In simple words, you need a dark place like the inside of a photocopier and a flash of light. In other words, you need a dark room and a flash of light. Perhaps a darker, yet darker room. But that might work to copy a place or a door. After all, you can't copy light. That's why the flame motif of the door is absent. But to copy a person or an entity, you need even more darkness. Negative photos, perhaps. Something like a dark world? And I'm gonna throw this out here. Maybe a form of dark fountain was used to make the Goners and to copy the vessel, and that's the reason why Gaster needed negative photons in the first place. He needed a dark fountain to copy Chris. But anyways, I ran out of threads to connect all of this, so that might be it for today. I really hope you liked the video, guys, and if that's the case, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. That really helps me and the channel, and let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of all this. Whatever the case, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.